Good morning, good evening, hello everyone who's watching around the world. So today we've got an amazing session about bridging classic logging with Azure Monitor using Azure DCEs and DCRs. So this is actually really top of mind at the moment. I did see actually some Microsoft documentation the other day about the potentially SCOM, the managed instance of SCOM also getting deprecated. And so recommendations are kind of moving the alerting system from some of those toolings and into this kind of Azure Monitor setup. So thank you, Timothy, for coming and presenting to us today on this very relevant topic. I've got a few So if my screen actually having problems, yeah, there we go. So this session is presented as part of the Microsoft Learning Room Skilling Room. So within the Microsoft Tech community, if you go down to the Skilling Hub and then Skilling Rooms directory, you can see a whole bunch of community-run groups. Azure Cloud Commanders, which is the one I run, is one of those groups. But there's some awesome groups for data and AI skilling, anything else really, even different languages. So make sure you check those out. It's a place where you can view sessions such as this one, and also have discussions and share tips around what you've done to learn the latest things and how your exams are going as well. So make sure you join in on that. This session is an inclusive session, so just be welcoming and respectful to everyone. There's no bad or wrong question. Feel free to put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring that throughout. So thank you again, Timothy, for coming and presenting to us today. Over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here to finally talk on this topic. My name is Timothy. The topic we have today is bridging classic login on Azure Monitor and DCE. So about me, my name is Timothy. I have over a decade experience in cloud and DevOps engineering, basically IT, so to say. I've worked across banks, fintechs, large-scale companies, and also SaaS companies. So today, basically what's brought about this topic is that I was involved in a task to move classic login into Azure Monitor, and it was a lot of activities. I I think from what Luke mentioned, there were so many things that I faced. There were so many challenges, and after all, I was able to figure it out. And I thought we could share this knowledge with everybody that is trying to do that also in their workspace, or maybe trying to learn more about it. So basically, what is the challenge? There are companies that are still running on prem infrastructure, and there's companies that are still that their migration plan was shift and lift into Azure. Nowadays, when anybody wants to move any service into Azure, we recommend they go the microservice architecture. They use Azure services like app services, the Kubernetes engine, and all. But there are still some companies, there are some large scale companies that they have applications that they've been running for over a long period of time. And the best they can do is to lift and shift it to Azure first before they start modernizing the application. So some of these companies, they use the classic login, which is the file-based login, and sometimes most of them are still using the other ingestion APIs, which could be Datadog. There are some services out there, for example, Datadog, and so you have so many tools and so many services that are spread across different providers. So this topic today is focused on moving your entire login system. As you are lifting and shifting your application into Azure, you can also lift and shift your logs into Azure. So what we'll be learning today, we'll be learning how to ingest log files into Azure Log Analytics workspace, which is the central repository for anything you want to do in Azure when it comes to log systems. And also, we are going to be using the data collection rules and data collection endpoints for transformations. And also we'll be talking about how to migrate from third-party tools like Datadog into Azure, and also some practical strategies that you could use to modernize your architecture. So those are the things we'll be talking about. Work with me as we go through these slides, and we'll have some demos to actually show you how to do these things around in Azure. So why use Azure Log Analytics? In the Azure ecosystem, Azure has created a tool, like I said, which is like a central repository, a tool where you can centralize all your logs irrespective of the service you are using in Azure. You could be using app service, you could be using the regular virtual machine, but there's a centralized service where you keep all those things, which is one of the benefits of Azure Log Analytics workspace. And then it has capabilities of querying the logs. You don't just dump logs in it, and when you want to get something, you have to start scrolling multiple times. No, it has advanced query capabilities where you can use the KQL, which is the crystal query language, if you're familiar with log space, Azure Log Analytics. And also it is native to Azure. So it is a service that is provided by Azure. If you're doing anything in Azure, you can be rest assured that you have a place to keep your logs. So you can seamlessly connect any service in Azure into your log analytics workspace. And also it has enterprise scalability. You can handle large amounts of data, irrespective of where the source is coming from, irrespective of the number of services that are sending logs into that place. It has enterprise scalability. You can increase the space, you can upsize whenever you want, you can change how you are ingesting into the log analytic workspace. You can also scale based on cost. For example, okay, probably you're paying for a third-party tool. Let's use Datadog, for example. And then in Datadog, you are just shipping all your logs. You're just moving everything. Whether you need it or not, you just ship it into it. But in Log Analytics workspace, it has a capability, especially when you're doing the data, when you're using data collection endpoints and data collection rules, you can shred off data that you don't need before it even gets into the workspace, so that you have a clean data and you have clean logs to go through. So that is why the log analysis workspace is a very good tool if you're working with logging systems in Azure. So the main services that you need in Azure to actually connect your classic login to Azure Monitor or Azure Log Analytics workspace are the data collection rules and the data collection endpoints. From the name, data collection endpoint, it looks like an entry point to something. So your data collection endpoint is what actually connects you to your system, whether you're using a virtual machine, so to say, because this particular topic will be using virtual machine as an example, whether you're connected to virtual machine or whatever source you're connecting to, your data collection endpoint, it is where the data gets into Azure in the first place. Now, data collection rules, on the other hand, is how you manipulate the data that is coming into Azure. So when the collection endpoint takes the data, you need to direct it somewhere. That is where the data collection rule comes in. Are you directing it to a log analytics workspace? Are you directing it to a particular table in the log analytics workspace? How are you manipulating the data that is coming from the endpoint? That is where the data collection rule comes in. It helps you to transform the data that is coming into Azure from your data source that the ingestion endpoint has taken in. And the last one of it is the log analytics, which we just talked about. The log analytics is the central database for your logs. It is where your logs are kept in Azure. And whenever you want to look for any log, whenever you want to query anything, you go to your log analytics workspace. And we'll also be exploring that in a minute as we go through the session. So now, the ingestion pipeline for the data collection endpoint or for the data collection rules, Azure has enabled it for classic login. For you to move your classic login system into Azure, Azure has created a flexibility around that where you can do log files. If there is a log file in your system, like we all know, traditionally most applications then, before the advent of most of these login services and ingestion services, most logs are kept in a file. Some people try to play around it and keep their logs in the database, but most application developers, they log into a file. So from the ingestion pipeline, which is one of the things the data collection endpoints and data collection rules can help you do, you can target a particular log file on your server and then ship the entry from that file into Azure. So for example, you have an application in your system, maybe an e-commerce application, and is logging to a particular directory, let's say on the server, maybe it's logging to the C directory /logs, then the name of the log. So you can capture that log part and put it in your data collection rules, and then it helps you to monitor that file and ingest any changes on that file, which is one thing Azure is trying to do with the classic login pattern. Nowadays, when you're developing services, when you're using app services, you can easily connect your application insights to it. Azure has given you that privilege to seamlessly connect new services, the app services, the function apps to application insights. Those goes into that properly. But here, you have a login system that you've been using already, but then you don't want to rewrite your application, which is what this topic about is trying to help us with. You don't want to rewrite your application. You just want to move that file, that login file, into where you can easily query it. So you can use the collection endpoint to your collection rule to target that particular file. Now, with that, you'll be needing an Azure Monitor agent. So if it's on a virtual machine, you install the Azure Monitoring agent on that virtual machine as an extension. You install it on that so that it helps you to track the file, because you need something to connect the workspace and the collection rules into the virtual machine. So when you install that extension, from the configuration of the rules, it tells you the parts of the files to monitor. So after it comes in from the monitor agent, and you do your transformation at the DCR level, which is where you change things before it gets into your log analytics workspace. So it says the Azure Monitor agent runs on servers and watches your configured log file path. So when I was trying this, I was monitoring a mail file in a Linux system, which is you get your var log mail log file. I was able to use that to monitor this file and ingest changes on that file. As the service is dropping the logs into the file, the Azure Monitoring agent is also sending it into Azure. So that is the ingestion pipeline end to end. Now, the other part is when you're using ingestion API, which, for example, as I was talking about, could be third-party tools like Datadog, SEQ. There are several tools out there that use ingestion endpoints. So that is where you can now use your data collection endpoint. At this stage, you don't need the Azure Monitoring agent, because that needs to be attached to a virtual machine, which is present in Azure. But here, for example, your server is on-prem, not even in the Azure ecosystem. You can use the data collection endpoint to send logs to that ingestion endpoint, and it goes into your log analytics workspace. So the flow is, you have the application, which is the source. The application makes a direct API call to the data collection endpoint via post. You will see samples of that. Makes that API call to the data collection endpoint. And when it gets to the data collection endpoint, remember, like as I said, data collection endpoint is just an entry point. When it gets to the DCR part, that is when you then transform what is coming in, and you put it to a particular path you want it to get to. Maybe you want it to go to a particular table, you want to remove some things. And if you're very familiar with KQL, you can restructure the data as it's coming before you even get to log analytics workspace. You can do some pattern matching to look for a particular field. Maybe the entire log is so much, you just want to capture the error part of it. So you can look for the error field with your KQL and send that to the log analytics workspace. So that is the flow if you're using the API endpoint. So we'll be trying a bit of demo to see how this works in Azure for the first data collection endpoint. So I'm going to share my screen right now to so present. So share screen. So we go into this. So this is Azure for me, and we go into hi Luke, can you help me? I'm trying to move the screen to the other part. So we go into Ingestion connections to share screen. Okay. Can you see my screen on Azure? This is not screen. So we go into data collection endpoint. So just to put it out there, when you're creating most of these resources, which could be either the data collection endpoints, the data collection rules, and the log analytics workspace, the connection between these services are region specific. So it means your data collection endpoint and your data collection rule must be in the same space with your data with your log analytics workspace. So fine. So if I present this. Oh, okay. Look, could you? Looks like it has taken the host right away from my screen. I'm unable to pop up my screen on to StreamYard. So while we're waiting for that to pop up, so I was explaining the data collection endpoint, it is region specific. So and also in the data collection endpoint, you can specify the type of system you're trying to connect with. You could either connect to a Linux system or to a Windows system. The reason why you have this separation is because sometimes you might want to target different parts on different types of system. So if you have, for example, you want to check your log files on a Linux server, you can configure a data collection endpoint to just target your Linux systems. And that way you can streamline that particular service to your Linux systems. And also you can create one for your Windows system. So this is the demo I created. I'm just going to show you how to create one. And remember, like I said, there's a flow to it, which it means you start from the data collection endpoint. So we're going to create one, call it demo DCE, data collection endpoint. We create it in my resource group, which I've created already. And like I said, your resources are region specific, meaning if you create a data collection endpoint in East US, all the other services have to be in East US, which is the data collection rules and the data collection and the log analytics workspace. So I'm going to create everything in East US too and review and create. The validation has passed. Okay, while that is being created, we can also create our data collection rules, which is the second part or which is the second junction to the particular to the entire configuration. So we create a data collection rule, call it demo DCR, which is data collection rule, and we have created a resource group for it. Remember, like you said, it has to be in the data in the same region. If you notice, if I drop this down, it's saying none because there is no data collection endpoint in that region. But if I change this to, I assume my data collection endpoint has finished. If I change this to East US 2, it should load my data collection endpoint. So it is region specific. Sometimes when you're creating this, you might be wondering why is this not showing. Just make sure that you put those two resources in the same region. And like I was saying, your platform type, do you want your data collection rule to target just Windows system or just Linux system, or you want it for both? We will try to limit this to Linux system for now. Then we go to resources. This means, do you want to attach resources to it? Do you have servers that you want to connect to it? So you can connect your servers at the data collection rule on the data. So we go to collect and deliver. Now, collect and deliver, this is where you specify what your data source looks like. Now, we'll be configuring a list
Hey team, it looks like Timothy has had a disconnect. It seems to be one of the, I'll re-add him back in. Welcome back.
Yeah, that's a network interruption from my end. My network device went off, but it's back. So let's just.
Well, good. It seems to be the morning of it because my computer just crashed as well. So I was frantically trying to get back in. But so good timing. I'll bring you back on screen.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Awesome.
so
you.
yeah. So I was talking about the data source. This is the point where you configure what you're trying to get into Azure. Are you trying to do a custom test log, or you want to do performance counters? If you want to target performance counter on your virtual machine, remember we chose the Linux system, which is why this is limited. If I go back to, let me close this so that we see the amount of options we can actually stream into Azure from our virtual machines. Let's make this all. Let's make this all. So next to resources, next to collect and deliver. When I click add data source and I select my data type, you can see different things you can send into the log analytics workspace from your virtual machines. Do you want to monitor IIS logs, which is a file-based logs? Do you want to monitor the Linux 6 log, which is also a file-based log on your Linux servers? Or you want to monitor firewall logs on your Linux servers, or you want to monitor Windows event log? That's actually, when you log into your Windows system, you click on event viewer, all the messages you see there, you can ship everything from your virtual machine into the log analytics workspace. So these are options of what we can do. But basically what we're trying to show here is you trying to move your classic login application into Azure. So we do the custom text log. Now the option changes. It asks you what is the file path of the particular log you're trying to get from your server. So this is just for you to enter the path to the log file on your server. If it's a Linux system, usually you find your log file in var log. One of the easiest logs you can probably get is maybe the syslog. Yeah, E. But if your application has a log in the log, what's it called? Directory, just specify the name of the path. That is the path, that's the file you want to monitor. And now the other part is it asks you to enter a table name. Now this table name is where it is going to ship it into, what's it called? The log analytics workspace. You can give it, let's say classic, I'm going to use one of the tables I created earlier because one of the downsides to you creating a table with the log analytics workspaces, it takes a whole lot of time before it actually propagates into Azure. It can take you as much as 30 minutes to get into Azure. We'll try that so that you see what I'm saying. But I'm going to use one of the tables I've created, which is classic file underscore log. Now, it says custom tables must end in CL. So whenever you're trying to create a custom table, which is not an Azure predefined table, you always put the underscore CL, which is custom log. Now, what is the record delimiter? In that file, how are you separating each log statement? You can set your delimiter maybe at the end of your log file based on the way you've configured your application. You're delimitering it with a colon. You put this colon here. If it's a semicolon, you put the semicolon here. If it is end of line, which is what most block files are based on, just leave it on end of line. And then do you want to transform it? For now, let's just ship the entire file into Azure. Then we use the KQL query in Log Analytics workspace to see how we can adjust some of these files. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to select the destination. Now you have options for destination. What type of destination? It is an Azure Monitor log. This is my subscription ID. Then you need to select the workspace. Remember, like I said, the entire flow is from your file or your application to the data collection endpoint, to the data collection rule, then into your log analytics workspace. So I'm going to select one of the log analytics workspace I already created just to save us time. Then I can add the data source into here. So then I try to add a tag, they need the tag for now, then we'll review and create. This is going to try to validate everything we've configured. If there is anything different, it's going to tell you. For example, if the table does not exist, you see a notification at the top of your screen that the table doesn't exist. So for these, we just click on create, and it is going to create that data collection rule for us. If you go to resource, and you go to data source, you see the custom test log we just configured. This is everything we configured while we were creating the data collection rule. And also at the point of entry, which is the data collection endpoints, if I go to overview, you actually see the data collection endpoints that has been merged to this particular data collection rule, which says this is the demo DCE. So for each data collection rule, there is an associated data collection endpoint, and it is a one-to-one matching. So now that I've created this particular data collection rule, let's try to spin up a VM, a Linux VM that has that particular log in it. So I'm just going to create a demo VM with preset configurations. So let's call it, let's put it in the login demo resource group. Call it demo VM. Yeah, you can leave it in availabilities zone, trusted launch type. Then let's use the Ubuntu server, x46. This is currently not available in my location. Let's just select a different size that's available. So let's just go for the regular B series. No. Okay, so I have a lot of sizes that are not available for me right now. Just go for the D series. Let's pick this. So select the D2 VS. It's trying to tell me my estimated cost for that particular thing that I've created. So we're just going to give it Azure user. Let's use the password because we might need to just check into the server to see the particular file part. So I'm going to give it a password. So Azure. Then give it a password. Let's just leave everything else as it is. So you just review and create. While that is creating, one thing else I can show you is we can also try to send logs via API. So when you create the data collection endpoint, I'm just going to duplicate my screen here. Okay, this is coming back with something. So while this is loading, I'm just going to duplicate my screen so that we'll see something about. Yeah, it's taking a while to run the validation on that. So when you create your data collection endpoint, I'm going to show you the ingestion API that you can send your logs to, just as you're sending it to ingestion API, for example, which could be Datadog, or it could be SQL, whatever kind of service you're using for your login. When you go to overview of the data collection endpoint, you see two URLs there. There is the configuration access and there is the log ingestion. So this is the API you send your logs to whenever you're trying to send it from service that, for example, it is on-prem, it is not even in your Azure ecosystem, or whatever service that is using the API method to send logs to your login platform. So this is the log ingestion API. We'll be doing some form of configuration on that just to see how it works. So this is done. Let's create. While the VM is creating, one other thing you need to do whenever you're trying to do API ingestion is you need a particular application registration or enterprise application that can access the services. Usually when you're trying to access services in the Azure ecosystem outside of Azure, you need a form of service principal or a form of enterprise application to which you can use to connect to this. So prior to this demo, I've created an enterprise application. You can, well, let's create one just to make the entire flow complete. So if you go to enterprise application, you can create a new application, call it create a new application, call it demo app, and I want to give you access to my tenant. So register with the tenant, and just in my directory, I register this service. So for this particular app registration you're creating, you will need to give it a permission on each of those services. So I'm not going to go across all the services just to save us time. I'm going to give it, this is a demo subscription. I'm going to give that particular enterprise application a contributor access on this subscription. These are the only resources in the subscription, so to say. So I'm just going to do that. If you go to my subscription and I go to IAM, you can add a role assignment. Just give the privilege administrator, but there are some monitoring rules. If you want to streamline, if you want to do it for least privilege, you could use monitoring contributor or log analytics contributor. So those can help you to give it a granular access to those resources, but I'm just going to give it a contributor but if you give it the monitoring, what's it called? Log analytics workspace contributor access, you should be able to reach those services. So with this, and we look for our app, which is demo app that we just created. And this gets access to that. So while the VM is still trying to come up, okay, so now that the VM has been created, we can go to the resource just to make sure that the resource is properly created and it is running. Now, so if you want to attach this particular resource to the data collection rule or data collection endpoint, you can either go to the, like I said, Azure has given you the capability to either add it on the data collection rule or you want to add it on the data collection endpoint. I prefer to add it on the data collection rule because that is where we actually configured the file-based login. The data collection endpoint was for the API login. So I'm just going to go to the demo DCR and you see resources. So under resources, you can easily add the machine. Once you add the virtual machine, automatically Azure is going to trigger the Azure monitoring agent installation on that particular server. So if I select demo VM and I apply. So you see here it says resource association completed. It might take a minute. So if you go back to the resource itself, you will see that it is installing the agent. If I go to the extension tab, get the settings, and I go to the extensions. You notice it's not showing yet, but give it a while, it's going to pop up. Yeah, it's going to take a while. So while that is still trying to install, the other part that I was explaining, which is if you want to use your API to ingest logs into your data source. Now, we haven't checked the most important service, which is the log analytics workspace, which is where the services are going to be, which is where the logs are going to be deposited. So we've examined the data collection endpoint, we've examined the data collection rule. Now let's see how everything talks to the log analytics workspace. Is trying to come up. If you notice when I was creating my my data source, when I was setting up my data source, I actually specified a particular table. That is because that table I've created it before now. I'm going to show you how to create the table in before. Okay. So it's taking a while. So it's going to give you a hard refresh. Okay, so this is my log analytics workspace. And in here, you have tables. So these are the tables that I have created before now. It's taking a while to load up. So the interesting thing about this is it's not showing the table, which is what I was saying the other time. When you try to create the table, for some reasons, Azure takes a while to propagate the table. If I check from KQL to be sure if the table exists, I can look for the table name. Classic file log. Let's go see it out. So if I run this, failed to resolve. Okay, so this is one of the issues we have, especially when you create the, let me check the API log table. can assure you these particular APIs are on this. So let's just be sure the tables are there. This is one of the challenges you actually face with this service. So if I go to Cloud Shell, just to be sure the service is there.
I was just going to say as well, if you click the little blue icon with the white to the left, just beside the run, there's the blue, like, there's no tables there. Okay.
Exactly, but there are tables in here. For some reasons, it is just not showing. So I'm going to try to query it with PowerShell, so we'll see the tables that are actually there. Because okay, so this is that. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So if I try to do this and I paste my command. Okay, so if I get the tables, on the status code, operation resource group. Okay. Let's get my subscription. Just get the subscription ID. View. This is in the wrong contexts. Copy, then paste. Oh, come on. Okay, so we've changed our contexts. Let's be sure. Okay, so this is the table, and this is one of the challenges you get while setting this up. As you can see, the table is existing if you query from PowerShell, but if you try to query the table itself from Log Analytics workspace, it takes a while for Azure to propagate things in this table. So if I try to check it again, I click here. Oh, now it's saying failed to resolve expression as table does not exist. But here we are for the table. Let me check the logs table. Is it present? So this is one of the challenges because I actually realized that this was going to be a challenge in this demo, which was I created a table before now. But interestingly, Azure is still not propagating the table for us while we are doing this demo. But that is the first part. So this is just to see what the table looks like. Now for the ingestion part, I have a query in here. I have a sample text in here. Just going to share my Visual Studio screen so that we see how it works when you're trying to send from the ingestion API. So I'm going to present. screen and screen.
All good, or is it not bringing it up?
Can you see my screen now? Can you see now?
No, sir. No, nothing's popped up.
Oh, so share screen. Can I do this?
Gotta love demos, eh? Yeah, there was always going to be something not quite. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is.
I've had similar things with Azure Firewall logs going into Log Analytics workspace as well, and not being able to view it. And yeah, you end up having to change the. It's not because the logs aren't in the table. It's just that sometimes the UI takes ages to see it, and you have to change the filters.
Yeah. So StreamYard is not picking up my screen.
Oh, I can see something come up.
Great. Yep. Okay, so this. Okay. So this is for example a sample PowerShell script that I wrote just to push something into the Log Analytics workspace for us. So you see how you can send in via the API and it works seamlessly. So I'm going to start another shell. New PowerShell terminal. So just off of the things we created the first time, remember I showed you we'll have a way to put the data collection endpoint, the data collection immutable ID. Those are the parameters you need just to send it to your API. So these are the parameters you need. You need your tenant ID, you need your application secret, which this I'm not supposed to expose to you, but for the sake of this demo, we're just going to leave it that way. So remember we created an application, an enterprise application just a few minutes ago with permissions, contributor permissions to the entire subscription. So that particular resource, that particular app registration is what we'll be using for our connection, because you need the secret, you need the application ID just to successfully connect to Azure. I'm sure there are some services that we've tried to connect to with Azure that requires you to use the client secret and the client ID. So this is just something I'm going to update here. Our tenant ID remains the same. I'm going to copy the secret and I'm going to paste the secret here. Don't worry, the secret expires shortly after this demo. So the app ID, and that is my tenant ID. The app ID. So just to show you how it works, you're going to see we'll be connecting to the particular Log Analytics, the data collection endpoint through a post request. Remember, it's an endpoint where you can connect to, you can talk to it via HTTP. Most log ingestion providers, that's the same thing they give to you. They give you an endpoint. I think Datadog gives you an endpoint. You have your Datadog key that you use to authenticate to that endpoint. Same way, we'll be using the app registration in this case to authenticate to our data collection endpoint. I'm going to grab the data collection endpoint once again, just to help us with this demo properly. And hopefully, before it gets to that point, our table is propagating properly in Azure. So just going to update the script, which is the data collection endpoint URI. This is the new one we just created. As you can see, it is demo DCE. Then there is an hashed value. There's a random string with the region and the ingest monitor.azure.com. Also, you need to specify the table that you're sending it to. So you could have a different table for your text files that are on your server. You could have a different table for logs that are coming from the API, which is why I created these two tables. And also a very important parameter is the data collection rule immutable ID. I'm going to show you how to get that in Azure. But usually once you go to the overview of the data collection rules on the JSON view button, if you click it, you see more information about that data collection rule. From there, you can get your immutable ID, which is what we'll be updating in here. This is taking a while. Is it just me or Azure is a bit not so responsive as I want it to be today? So I'm just waiting for that to propagate. Okay, so this is the immutable ID, and try not to mix it up with that of the data collection endpoint, because the immutable ID is also on data collection endpoint. You see DCE with the data collection endpoint, or you see DCR with the data collection rule immutable ID. So I'm just going to run this script, which is going to help me to send my logs to my DCE, and I've tried to create a sample log. So what I want to do is I want to send all these lines. This is a sample log file from Postfix. So if you're on a Linux server that you install Postfix on it, if you go to var log, mail log, you see something of this, something like this log file here. So I'm trying to imitate myself sending my mail log from my server into Azure, because sometimes when these mail log files are so heavy and you have log rotate configured on it, you might miss some important things you need to do for your investigation, or probably you want to do root cause analysis for whatever it is you want to do. So I'm going to execute the script, and hopefully our table is running properly. If I select my type based on the script, I want to send it to API, and I enter this. So it's going to authenticate the there I have my token. This is it. I was able to authenticate. So this is me now trying to send some of these things into Azure. It is taking a while, and I hope it's not going to give me an error. Or hopefully, if it gives an error, I am going to, if the table is not yet responding properly. Yeah, so the authentication product doesn't have access to it, just into data collection rule. So that means the permission we gave that application has not successfully propagated on Azure. This is one of the issues you face when you're setting this particular service up. For some reasons, it doesn't propagate. I've tried to find reasons why. For some reasons, it doesn't propagate properly into Azure. So I'm going to check the service once again. But as you can see, we were able to get our token, so the application was able to authenticate to Azure properly. If I go into the data collection rules and I check the IAM, hopefully it has successfully propagated that. So propose assignments. Okay, so this is another thing we are facing right now, which is trying to get our logs, trying to get the service to access the newly created resource. So just going to try to put all my screen together so that we can see everything in one screen. Because I'm trying to take it across. So if I share my entire screen, so that we can properly see what I'm trying to do here. So this is the data collection rules here. And if you check the AM on it, that role assignment we created has been propagated, demo hub, but it is still not allowing our service to get access to that. Let's try to push it once again. So we're able to get our token. Still not going through. So we're just going to give it a while. And while we're doing that, let's check on our virtual machine if it has successfully installed the extension. If you come to extension, and you should see the data, the Azure extension successfully installed on it. Some details about installed extension are now available because it's okay. So Azure doesn't like our demo for today. Oh, so the virtual machine stopped. Get started again. Just to come up.
We're coming up to time as well. Just
yeah. So unfortunately, Azure is not allowing us to do most of the demo we want to do. But basically, that is. I just wanted to show us how you can configure the services so that your logs can get into Azure and so that you can see how these things work properly. You have your ingestion API, which is on your data collection rule, on your data collection endpoint, which is this, as I've just showed us. This is demo DCE. This is the log ingestion API. Now, I used a value which was the log ingestion, which was the data collection endpoint and data collection rule immutable ID that I added to my script. This is where I got it from in case you want to track it. If you go to your data collection rules and you click on the data collection rule itself, you will see the immutable ID. You always need that to get access to your to get access to the data collection rule itself. I'm going to drop some links in the chat in case you want to read more on Azure. You want to learn how to configure these things on Azure. I'm going to drop some links in the chat right now just to give you more insights on that. Data collection.
yeah, thanks. That was going to be my question. Was it where do people go if they want to learn more about this?
Yes. So if you go to data collection rules on Azure, you can see these links in the chat. Comments. Okay, so I'm going to send this to you because I'm unable to post it in the chat, but I've sent it to you in case you want to help us to drop it in the chat. So those are ways Azure has helped. I have this running in my enterprise environment. Unfortunately, I can't share my screen to show us that at the moment, but it was properly configured and it works properly. I also have a personal repository that I'm working on. I'm creating a multi-logger service, which I'll also be dropping on the community chat once it's ready. on how you can, on a package that you can put into your application that just helps you to send your logs to Azure Data Collection Endpoints. You don't have to connect any. It's a package, the readme.net package. I'll be dropping the link, the GitHub repository to the community chat. Anybody that wants to contribute to it, you have anything you want to add to it, it's a multi-logger service. You can connect it to it. If you decide today that you don't want to use Datadog anymore, the only thing you just need to do is to flip your config file and it changes it to Azure Data Collection Endpoint, and you supply the parameters, and whatever service it has, I've configured it to use Azure Data Collection Endpoints, Datadog, Sec, and one other service like that. I'll also be dropping that chat in the community just for anybody to do that. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me personally. I'll love to have a one-on-one with anybody that is interested, just to show you that this works properly. I've tested it and it works. If you want to reach out to me so that we can try it properly, I would love to show you how it works and how you can get it ready in your enterprise environment. Unfortunately, most of the things we have today did not propagate on time, even though it was pre-configured ahead of the demo. Yeah. Some of it are still not propagating properly. So apologies for that. And I thank you, everybody, for joining the session. I'll be looking forward to comments, to questions on the community. Yeah. You can drop your chats. If you need anything, I'm ready to give you feedback. I'm ready to help you navigate this particular challenge I will face today.
That's awesome. Thank you, Timothy. I definitely wish that I had watched this session before I never needed to play around with data collection rules and transforms. So thank you very much. That was very helpful. And I think even though the demos didn't go according to plan, sometimes this is just real life. Like even the act of going through and trying to troubleshoot it is a learning on itself. So it's you took it all in good stride, so it's all good. These things happen, but I think you showed essentially the process anyway. No questions in chat, but I have shared your LinkedIn with the community as well. So feel free to reach out to Timothy. I've put the Microsoft Learn Data Collection link in the chat as well, so that will be there for people to access. But I think we'll finish it here. But thank you very much, Timothy, for donating your, what is it, night there?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, night to come and talk to us for a good hour on Azure Monitor and Data Collection Rules. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody that joined also.